Hey there, guys. I'm going to keep this one pretty simple, but I want to ask the question. Should raids be shorter in MMOs? Now, I know some people are going to get upset about this question because, of course, we all like our MMOs. We all like to have a skill based expression. Some people love the time we spend together, and I'm certainly one of them. I love the time spent with my raiding guilds. I mostly raid in WoW because that takes quite a bit of time. But I've done some light raiding in 14, just the basic stuff that you can queue up with randoms. I haven't tried any like savage tier stuff or anything super hard, just because I'd rather do that with people I know. And I'm pretty good at most games I play, not trying to pat myself in the back. But when I test myself, when I focus, I can generally do really well. And WoW, with my character, I'm usually above, the 85th percentile, for example. And in most games I pick up, I will practice and force myself to get good enough because I have a crippling anxiety of not being good enough for my team, which was instilled into me when I tried to learn tanking in World of Warcraft Cataclysm. I'm sure some of you know why that might have happened. But what I think I've been noticing lately, because, I'm getting old, is that raid time is very frustrating. And I think this is less a reflection on me just getting old, and also a reflection on gaming in general, and maybe something important for MMOs to innovate on. Because the innovation we've seen in MMOs has been fairly small. I think any of the massive content creators who, do MMOs like Asmon, Asmongold, or Josh Strife Hayes, or even MMO Byte, they jump around to a lot of different MMOs themselves. And I watch all these guys because I'm interested in MMO content as well as other games. But I've noticed that everyone's starting to want to play more than one thing. And I think a big reason for that is we've all kind of had this illusion dispelled, the illusion that was hiding the truth that, it's nice to have one game that's really, really great and be a mono gamer if that game is constantly the best. But there's a lot of games that are good, and there's a finite amount of time you can really throw at all the things you want to do. And I think that that can be very difficult to balance for most people. And what really ends up happening is MMORPGs have raids, which tend to be a little bit of a time user. A lot of games try to sort of fluff up their engagement time or get you logging on daily by having these massively large things to go through. I think 14 is pretty perfect in the sense that it's pretty quick, depending on what you want to do. They don't waste your time with trash. They don't put a lot of meaningless things in your way to kind of pad out the time you're taking. You go up to the bosses and you learn how to fight them, and that's pretty exciting. Now, I do think 14 suffers from having very weak mob engagement. So when you fight mobs, it's just not interesting because you basically just mash your AoE attacks. So right now I'm running on my island. I would basically just do, my AoE strikes as my samurai, and then I just spam my AoE rotation, which is much less engaging than my single target one, and it's over. And the ads don't really do much. I think that there is a better balance point, though. I do enjoy killing mobs in dungeons because that's kind of the thing. They're made to be interesting in those. But in raids, I feel like WoW in particular uses a lot of your time on repeating senseless things. Like, oh, here's a bunch of ads that'll take, a bunch of, like hours of your life. And I think most people just don't have that kind of time anymore. I think that in general, one of the design decisions that MMOs should be taking is trying to sort of flatten that time spent. If I'm here to show my skill and show that I'm good enough to do something, let me show that off. I know right now I'm focusing a lot on WoW because I think that's still a major player, although that's been dwindling. Recently I was doing that content and we did a Sylvanas fight. And the Sylvanas fight isn't super bad except for the fact that it's needlessly padded. It has this whole phase where you're just kind of killing a bunch of ads and running through this like mini puzzle. but it's not a complicated puzzle. It's not like you can really use your skills to do that puzzle that much better or that much faster than anyone else. But it's just a chance for people to like accidentally fall off a cliff and die instantly. And it's just an exercise in wasting time. I think that this needs to be erased from MMOs if they're going to survive in the more modern era. In particular, because when you look at more modern games, you know, what's popular? A lot of quick pick up and play games. I'm not saying MMOs should become just quick pick up and play, but I think that this long drawn out content is very tough to be enjoyable for everyone because it asks you to say, okay, you have a week to do a whole raid because usually people have weekly resets, and it's it's hard to fit that in. I mean, you got to find a few days or whatever it takes you to cram all that in, and if you miss it, it's like, well, there's your FOMO. You didn't complete it, then you don't get the rewards. I know for my raiding guild in WoW, it's 2 nights a week. 2 nights a week of going from about 9 to 11 o'clock. That's a lot of time to dedicate 2 nights a week of, and I think it can be very frustrating. I think it's good to have skill-based challenges in games. I think that is important, but I think that adding on all this time-based stuff is very frustrating. It's not like I don't have time to play. Most people do have time to play, but they only have time to play at certain times. I think that that's kind of key to it. So, what do I think, though? Let's get a little bit more into the depths of this. Do we need to change values in MMOs? I mean, no. We could just leave things the same as they are, but then we're kind of stunting the growth. I know there's going to be some people who are always going to say things were better in their day. Things were better when they were the kings of the world, when they knew the strats, when the game was just more hardcore, more challenging, when it was only for the people who really knew what they were doing, which of course is always not the newer players, it's always the older players, even though they, always find out, oh, the content I thought was hard was actually super easy. I think we're all kind of victims to, being of our era, being of our time. Of course we're going to cling to the things we thought were most valuable, because who wants to change that up? No one. But I do think that MMOs in general need to adapt a little bit more to the times. They need to be more respectful of your time. They need to understand that, content should be enjoyable. It should be fun first. In the past, it was a little more acceptable because the content was partially just the fact that it was an MMO. It was such a unique experience at the time. But I think that, having the opportunity to do things in a reasonable amount of time is not a big ask. And it can still be rewarding for those people who are more hardcore. It can still reward you for spending time in the game. And there's still ways the game can make a time sink that can be enjoyable. As an example, what I'm doing right now, which is, just gathering some stuff on a 14 island, which is just a nice little thing that I can do whenever I want to. And it's really good for making videos off of where I just kind of do my stream of consciousness thing. Now, time spent in an MMO is important. Of course, you want to show that you're good at the game. You want to spend time in the game. There should be things for you to do. I just think that sometimes forcing it when you have to be amongst other people and it has to be this big organized thing and, all that, that's where it's most dangerous to require a huge amount of time. Because, let's be frank, it's hard to find the amount of hours you need in a more modern day. And increasingly, that's kind of been more limited to people who have the luxury of being able to play that much. Streamers, kids who live at home, kids, people who live at home, NEETs, people who might have enough vacation time to do these things. For me, because I'm a teacher, it's not too hard for me to have some time to game, but it can still be stressful to try and fit it in. Like, no matter what, I want to show up. I don't want to let people down. So that can be a little bit negative. So is there a middle ground? I do think there is. I think making some of that grinding take place on your own time, eliminating some more of this FOMO where it's like, oh, if you don't complete it in this X amount of time, like, you're screwed. Like, there should be ways to catch up, rather than being very punishing where it's like, oh, you didn't catch up this week, well, you're just behind, until we release our next patch and we create this mechanic which basically invalidates all the work you put in anyways. I think there's ways to just make it fun. And I think if MMOs are going to be profitable and continue to draw people in, they need to learn from what the contemporary games are doing that makes them more enticing, which is letting people jump in, which is letting people do content. Doesn't mean the skill has to vanish. There's, as much as people love to hate on Fortnite, and not that I'm good at it or really know much about it, but I do know that there is a lot of skill-based play there. But people can still enjoy it even when they suck at it. And I mean, plenty of people suck at MMOs. We've seen that in all kinds. But I think there's a way to kind of do this. I really ultimately just want to see these games do better. I love MMOs. I love playing them. I love doing a lot of things. But there's definitely aspects of the game that are missing. There are things that have been neglected that many people see as good, but aren't really focused on, which could help them a lot. Customization of characters, better stories. We're seeing that these things are things that people really like and really want. Look at some of the more popular content out there. People will always talk about how the game looks, about how it feels, about how much you can customize your character, about the story. These things do matter to people. Even things like roleplay are slowly becoming more and more popular and more mainstream to talk about. There are ways games can support these functions. Even dead games, which I loved in the past, like WildStar, had this amazing housing system which had its own pretty huge community in it, which stayed alive up until the game died, because it just let you have fun. And there was even tie-ins to other content, like if you killed really hard raid bosses or dungeon fights, you could get certain pieces of furnishing that other people wouldn't have. So there was a reason to engage in the other combat. I think something like pet battles in WoW are a good example of how to tie cosmetic and fun content into other things. You get all these cool pets from different sources, so it also kind of encourages you to do different things. Of course, it won't be for everyone, but there are ways that you can get people to still play while still making it enjoyable. I think, in a way, a lot of MMOs have been focusing too hard on making things a bit more of a struggle than they need to. I think 14 has kind of learned a lot about that, but it also suffers from having, a lot of lull periods and dungeons that aren't terribly exciting, so there's no real perfect answer. But anyways, those are just some thoughts I've had about the length of MMOs and why I think raids should be a little shorter, and how they could be better presented to the players, so you're more empowered to have a choice. So you can be like, okay, I did well enough. I know these fights. Maybe it takes me 2 or 3 hours to do everything. And I would say that, leaning towards 2 is probably best per week. I think it's a big ask to expect people to just log on and plug away so much, especially since, raids, you kind of have to knock out as much as you can per day. Otherwise, ads respawn in certain areas, and it gets just very frustrating. But yeah, that's about it. Just some thoughts I thought I'd share. You all take care, and I'll make another video soon. Sorry for being a little late on this one. I had some things come up, school starting soon, so I had to kind of get prepped, get my room ready. But, I won't talk too much about that unless I get fans who want to hear about it. But yeah, please leave a comment if you like. Please subscribe if you like my commentary. If you have suggestions. Right now, it's very chill, very stream of consciousness. Just kind of me doing stuff because I have to learn editing. I have to do a few other things. But I kind of just want to get ideas out there, see what people are interested in. I'm going to be trying another series idea soon, but I have a few videos that, they're just ideas that come to me as I'm driving to work or driving to go to the gym or do other things that I like to talk about. So you all take care, and I will see you again soon.